All right, today we are diving into something called the Crysticism Spiritual Survival Handbook. Now, this is basically a guide that says if you want to thrive out in the world, you first have to get a handle on your inner world. So let's jump in and see what it's all about. Okay, so we're going to break this down into 5 key parts. It's really a practical toolkit for mastering yourself. We're talking about everything from what really happens when you sleep to the spiritual side of your music playlist and even how the energy you put out there, well, how it comes back to you. So let's get right into it. Part 1, your soul's second life, the hidden battlefield of sleep. Now, the handbook kicks off with a pretty wild idea. When you think you're clocking out for the night, your real work is actually just getting started.
You ever have one of those nights? You get a solid 8 hours, but you wake up feeling even more exhausted than when you went to bed. Maybe anxious or just off? Well, according to this handbook, that's not a coincidence. It's a clue about where you've been.
So the handbook says your soul basically takes this elevator ride every single night to a place called the astral plane. Think of it as a dimension made of pure thought and emotion. And while your body's recharging, the real you is out there. Learning things, exploring, or sometimes even getting into spiritual battles.
And this is where it gets really interesting. There are basically 2 main places you can end up. The basement, which is full of fear, anger, all that heavy stuff, or the classroom, a place for real spiritual growth. And here's the key. Your mindset right before you drift off, that's what pushes the button on the elevator. So if you fall asleep stressed out, watching negative news, you're probably heading downstairs. But if you're calm and focused, you're headed up to class. So how do you make sure you're heading to the right place? Well, the handbook gives a pretty simple 3-step ritual. First, read to feed. Basically, consume something uplifting before bed, not just stressful stuff. Second, call for protection. Just actively ask your inner team for a shield. And finally, seal the room. Visualize your space filled with a protective violet light. The whole point is to take control and consciously choose your destination.
And this whole idea of managing your energy consciously, it flows perfectly into our next section, Decoding Life's Mirror, which is all about how karma really works, according to this source.
Okay, so when you hear the word karma, you might think of punishment, right? But this handbook is super clear. That's not it at all. It's not a cosmic judge. It's more like a mirror or a boomerang. It's a totally neutral law of energy. Whatever you put out there, good or bad, just circles back to you. Simple as that.
Now, this is where it gets really tactical. The source says this simple law of return can be hijacked. Look, when you mess up, you're supposed to feel healthy remorse. That's your inner compass saying, hey, you made a mistake, let's learn and do better. But then there's what it calls the enemy tactic, toxic shame. That's the voice that says you are a mistake. It's designed to lock you in a loop so you can't clear that debt and move on.
So how do you break out of that loop? The handbook offers a pretty powerful tool for this, called the violet flame. The best way to think about it is like a spiritual eraser. The idea is you visualize this violet fire and you state your intention to just consume the cause and effect of your mistakes. It's a way to clear that karmic slate in real time so you're not carrying it around with you.
All right, so we've covered where you go at night and how energy comes back to you. Now let's look at the hardware you're running on, what the source calls your inner power grid.
What we're talking about here are the 7 energy centers, or chakras. The handbook describes them like these power stations that run up your spine, and each one is in charge of a different part of your life. From survival and grounding at the bottom, all the way up to your spiritual connection at the very top. And this is the key takeaway, right here. You know that feeling of being stuck or unmotivated, that kind of failure to launch vibe? Well, the source says that's basically a power outage. It's a blockage in this internal grid. If one center gets clogged up, it can mess with the whole system.
Which, of course, brings us to our next topic, the battle for your senses. Because if you have an inner power grid, you have to ask, what are you fueling it with? And according to this handbook, a lot of that fuel comes from what you see and hear every day.
Let's start with music. The handbook has this cool way of looking at it. It calls music a carrier wave for whatever intention the artist put into it. So some music can be like a spiritual vitamin. It strengthens you. But other kinds of music, maybe stuff that's really chaotic or angry, can act like a toxin. It creates what the source calls astral gunk, that literally clogs up those energy centers we just talked about.
And that brings up a really good question, doesn't it? Is your playlist choosing your vibration for you? Think about it. When you're just letting music play, are you in control of your mood? Or are you letting an algorithm or an artist's emotional state dictate how you feel?
And it's not just sound, it's also sight.
The source has a great term for this: digital trash. That's all the super fast synthetic images you see scrolling on social media. The argument is that this stuff literally gums up your third eye or your vision center. It clutters your own mental screen, making it super hard to visualize your own goals and your own life.
Okay, and that takes us to our final section: modern traps, ancient tools. We're going to look at how this all plays out in what the source calls the high school simulation of modern life. First up, we need to talk about the difference between information and what the handbook calls gnosis. See, information is just data. It's facts you store in your head. But gnosis? That's when a truth really hits you. It moves from your head down into your heart, and it actually changes how you live. It's not about what you know, it's about what you become. Another huge trap? Comparison culture. We all know it. The handbook frames this as a deliberate energy drain. It's designed to make you feel less than. And the tool to fight it isn't to create a better online profile. It's to build your internal brand, which is just a cool way of saying integrity. You know, making sure your thoughts, your words, and your actions are all in alignment.
Then there's the topic of substances. The handbook has a really vivid way of explaining this. It says your aura, your personal energy field, is like a high-tech spiritual survival suit, and things like drugs and alcohol literally tear holes in that suit. It's not just a physical thing, it's seen as a kind of chemical warfare that leaves you wide open to outside negativity.
And the last modern trap we'll cover is something called the time glitch. Think about endless scrolling, right? The argument here is that all that high-speed information is designed to shatter your perception of time. And why does that matter? Because it locks you out of the present moment, which, according to the handbook, is the only place your true power actually exists.
And we're going to end with this quote from the handbook, because it really just nails the whole message. The world wants a human viewer, your soul needs a human doer. It really comes down to a choice, doesn't it? Are you here to just watch? Or are you here to actually do something, starting with your own inner world? Definitely something to chew on.